The sky over Trảng Bàng turned orange. Suddenly, a loud roar filled the air. Flames shot down from above. 9 years old, Francis Kim Phuc ran as fast as she could. Her clothes were gone, burned away by fire. Her skin blistered instantly. Her back was badly burned. Around her, other civilians ran in panic. Mothers cried. Children screamed. Soldiers dived for cover. This was napalm, one of the deadliest weapons of the Vietnam War. Napalm was not just a bomb. It was fire made to stick. It could burn jungle, houses, bunkers, and people. Thick, sticky, burning gel. Once it touched something, it would not let go. For civilians in the wrong place at the wrong time, it was terrifying. Napalm had been used long before Vietnam. It was invented in 1942 by a Harvard chemist named Louis Fieser. The idea was simple but deadly. Mix gasoline with special chemicals to make it thick, sticky, and very flammable. By the Vietnam War, a new version called Napalm B was used. It had plastic and benzene added, so it burned hotter and longer than the older version. One canister could destroy a large patch of jungle, flush soldiers from bunkers, or hit enemy positions that regular bombs could not. On the battlefield, napalm worked like nothing else. North Vietnamese and Viet Cong soldiers could hide in thick jungle or in underground tunnels. Regular bullets or bombs often could not reach them. Napalm solved that problem. It burned everything in its path and forced the enemy to leave their hiding places. Sometimes it was dropped from F-4 Phantom jets or A-1 Sky Raiders. The pilots would drop explosive bombs first to shake up the enemy, then release napalm, covering the area in a quiet, deadly orange fire. Soldiers on the ground learned to respect it. Forward air controllers or FACs would guide the pilots. Sometimes troops were very close to the strike, just a few hundred meters, but it helped them advance safely. The heat from the fire could be felt even at a distance. One Marine said, "You could feel it on your back. The air itself burned. You knew it was powerful and deadly." But napalm was not perfect. Civilians often got caught. Villages could burn. Children, farmers, and elderly people were sometimes in the strike zone. Kim Phuc's story became famous because it showed the terrible cost of napalm. One photo of her running naked in flames became world famous and changed the way people saw the war. It showed the suffering of innocent people and reminded the world that war is never clean. Napalm was also simple to make and cheap. American factories produced thousands of canisters. The US military considered it very effective. In Vietnam, where the jungle made ambushes easy, napalm gave soldiers a chance to fight back. It could clear dense areas, destroy tunnels, and stop enemy attacks before troops got hurt. The fire itself was horrific. Napalm B burned at nearly 1,000 degrees Celsius. It could stick to anything: trees, buildings, and human skin. Water alone could not easily stop it. If someone was hit, the burns were usually very severe. 4th and 5th degree burns were common, which could reach muscles and cause long-term damage. The fire also released poisonous gases. Carbon monoxide could make victims faint or die even before the flames reached them. Despite all this, soldiers saw napalm as a lifesaver. It protected troops in dense jungle areas. It made enemy fighters leave their hiding places, but the cost was high. Civilians suffered. Children like Kim Phuc were badly burned. Villages were destroyed. Families were split. The suffering lasted long after the fire went out. Napalm was used in different ways. Jets dropped it from the sky. Tanks like the M67 Zippo had flamethrowers to burn enemy bunkers. Artillery sometimes spread the gel on the ground. Wherever it went, it controlled the battlefield. Soldiers could push forward while enemy positions were being destroyed. It was terrifying, deadly, and effective. The most powerful part of napalm was its human effect. The heat, the fire, the smoke. It could break enemy morale instantly. Soldiers who might fight another day would run or surrender when they saw the orange fire coming. But for civilians, it was tragedy. Children, women, and old men could not escape. The image of Kim Phuc running in flames captured the world's attention. Her face, twisted in pain and fear, became a symbol of what war can do to ordinary people. In Vietnam, napalm was part of the war from early 1960s to the 1970s. It was meant to protect American and Allied soldiers, but it also showed the terrible cost of modern weapons. Dense jungle, hidden enemy, and sticky fire combined to make Vietnam one of the most brutal battles of the 20th century. Napalm was simple, cheap, effective, deadly, and unforgettable. Every drop left a mark on soldiers, civilians, and the history of war. It burned through jungle, bunkers, and homes. It changed tactics. It saved lives, and it caused suffering that would never be forgotten. The fire spread fast. Napalm didn't just burn, it stuck. It clung to skin, clothes, and even hair. Victims screamed in agony. The air smelled of smoke, burning flesh, and fear. Flames licked everything in their path. Trees, huts, and roads vanished under the orange blaze. Napalm was essentially gasoline with a thickener. The US military called it Napalm B. Unlike normal fuel, it burned longer, up to 10 minutes in some cases. It could stick to surfaces, even humans, and create terrifying, uncontrollable fires. That stickiness is what made it deadly. A single canister could destroy bunkers, trenches, and entire fields of dense jungle. Soldiers in Vietnam quickly learned its power. Dense vegetation hid enemy fighters. A standard artillery shell might not reach them. Napalm could. It forced soldiers out of hiding. Entire enemy positions could be cleared without sending troops directly into fire. But it came at a terrible cost. Civilians often ran alongside soldiers. Villagers were caught in the same firestorms. Children like Kim Phuc suffered first. Their cries echoed over the battlefield, a haunting soundtrack to the war. Air support pilots had a grim job. They flew F-4 Phantom jets, spotting enemy positions from high above. One jet dropped high explosives first to scatter the area. Then came the napalm. A silver cylinder fell silently. Seconds later, a ball of fire spread across the target. The oxygen in that area disappeared almost instantly. Soldiers and fighters alike could barely breathe. Napalm was cheap and effective. For commanders, it solved tactical problems quickly. Dense jungle hiding enemy troops? Burn it. Well-fortified bunkers? Burn them. Massed infantry attacks? Burn the middle of the wave. It was terrifying to see from the air and deadly to touch. But the effects went beyond burns. Victims often inhaled smoke and toxic gases. Carbon monoxide and carbon dioxide poured from the fire. People could pass out and die, even if they escaped the flames. Nervous systems were damaged. Victims suffered weakness, confusion, and shock. Bones and internal organs could be affected. Long-term survival often meant a lifetime of pain, scarring, and surgeries. Medical teams had to work fast. In Vietnam, doctors and nurses treated burns with whatever they had on hand. Water and basic dressings were the first step. Skin grafts became a common treatment. Many victims needed dozens of surgeries over years. Kim Phuc, for example, went through 17 operations before she could move properly again. For soldiers, napalm was a tool, but also a psychological weapon. The mere threat of a napalm strike could stop enemy movements. Tanks and troops hesitated when a jet appeared overhead. Napalm wasn't precise like a sniper rifle. It was chaos in a canister. The sky itself became part of the battlefield. The US military stockpiled napalm early in the war. It was cheap to produce, easy to store, and devastating on impact. Crews trained to use it carefully, often in coordination with forward air controllers on the ground. These controllers guided pilots to drop napalm close to enemy troops while avoiding friendly forces. Still, mistakes happened. Civilians were often too close. Entire villages sometimes burned. The weapon wasn't just dropped from planes. Ground forces used flamethrower tanks, nicknamed Zippos or M67s. These tanks could shoot sticky fire into bunkers or trenches, flushing out soldiers or destroying tunnels. Napalm's semi-liquid nature meant it could flow into low spaces and kill anyone hiding inside. It was brutal and effective. Yet the horror of napalm sparked global outrage. Images like Kim Phuc's running down the road became symbols of the war's cruelty. The world saw the consequences in stark, undeniable detail. A little girl burned and naked, screaming in agony. Mothers mourning children. Villagers burned alive. This was the human cost of a weapon designed to destroy. Despite the ethical debates, military leaders defended its use. Napalm saved lives on the battlefield. American, South Vietnamese, and Allied troops by clearing dangerous positions quickly. A trapped squad could call in an airstrike and force enemy soldiers out without a direct assault. It was a tactical solution, but a brutal one. The logistics were complex. Factories produced napalm in huge quantities. Aluminum salts, polystyrene, and benzene were mixed into jellied gasoline. Canisters were prepared, stored, and transported carefully. Any accidental ignition could kill workers. Yet production never stopped. The war demanded it. Napalm's use also shaped tactics. Enemy forces learned to dig deeper, to build tunnels, and to move at night. Commanders planned strikes around civilian areas. Yet in a war of jungle and guerrilla tactics, civilian casualties were often unavoidable. Napalm strikes cleared everything in their path, men, animals, and houses alike. For soldiers on the ground, the psychological impact was profound. Hearing the roar of jets overhead, the whistle of falling canisters, and the explosion of fire created panic. The smell of burning vegetation and human flesh lingered for miles. Soldiers became conditioned to fear napalm, almost as much as they feared enemy fire. The weapon's notoriety grew over time. Images of burned children, destroyed villages, and smoldering jungles circulated worldwide. Anti-war protests gained power. The iconic photograph of Kim Phuc running from napalm changed public perception. It showed the raw human cost of war. Yet in the field, soldiers and commanders faced tough choices. Napalm could break a stubborn defensive line. It could stop an enemy advance. It could protect their comrades from ambushes in the dense jungle. For many, the immediate survival of troops outweighed ethical concerns. The Vietnam War became a case study in the power and danger of incendiary weapons. Napalm was effective in clearing dense forests, destroying bunkers, and halting enemy troops. But it left behind images, scars, and stories that haunted the world. Children burned, villages erased, lives forever changed. Even decades later, the effects remain visible. Survivors carry scars, both physical and mental. Kim Phuc turned her experience into a message of peace, founding organizations to help children affected by war. Her story reminds us of napalm's impact, not just as a military weapon, but as a human tragedy. Napalm was simple in design, but devastating in effect. It was gasoline, thickened and made to stick. It was cheap, efficient, and terrifying. But for every tactical success, there was human suffering. Each strike left a battlefield littered with flames, ashes, and cries that could never be unheard. The weapon's legacy is mixed. Militarily, it changed how troops fought and how commanders planned. Politically, it fueled anti-war movements. Socially, it left a generation of survivors with scars that would never fully heal. In Vietnam, napalm burned forests, villages, and children. It created tactical advantages, but it also created global outrage. The image of a 9-year-old girl running from fire became one of the most powerful symbols of the war, illustrating the devastating combination of human vulnerability and military technology. The smoke cleared, the jungle was blackened, twisted, trees burned to stumps. The ground still smoked where napalm had hit. Survivors crawled through the ash. Some were screaming, some were silent. Many had nothing left: clothes, homes, family. Soldiers looked around in shock. The fire had done its job. Enemy positions were destroyed. Trenches were emptied. Bunkers flattened. Napalm had killed, burned, and terrorized. It was ruthless. It was precise in its own way, yet indiscriminate to anyone nearby. In villages across Vietnam, civilians bore the brunt. Children, women, the elderly, they had nowhere to hide. Napalm did not care. Its sticky, burning gel clung to skin, to hair, to clothing. For the unlucky, death was instant. For others, it was hours of unimaginable pain. Those who survived faced long journeys of recovery. Skin grafts, surgeries, and scars that would never fade. Back in the air, pilots flew again and again. Their target coordinates marked villages, forests, or enemy-held hills. Each run was a calculation of risk. How close could they strike without hitting friendly troops? How many canisters to drop to break the enemy? The weapon was effective, cheap, terrifying, and above all, designed to clear obstacles. But there was always a human cost. Images like that of Kim Phuc, the girl running naked from the fire, spread worldwide. They shocked the world. They became symbols of the war's horror. Photos and newsreels influenced public opinion. Anti-war movements gained momentum. Politicians and military leaders faced questions they could not answer with strategy alone. Napalm's effect on the battlefield was clear. It destroyed positions, denied cover, and forced the enemy into the open. Yet the moral weight of its use lingered. Soldiers knew it saved lives on their side, but civilians suffered. The screams of children and the sight of burning villages haunted returning units. Over time, the United States stopped producing and using napalm. International law restricted its use against civilians, but the legacy remained. Lessons from Vietnam shaped military ethics, targeting protocols, and weapons development. Modern incendiary devices are now more controlled. Precision strikes aim to minimize collateral damage, yet the memory of napalm, the fire that could turn a jungle into ash, remains a grim reminder of total war. For those who survived, like Kim Phuc, life continued under the shadow of fire. She became an advocate for peace, a witness to the suffering that war can inflict. Her story reminds the world of what happens when human conflict meets technology built to destroy. Napalm in Vietnam was more than a weapon. It was a force that reshaped jungles, changed tactics, and left deep human scars. It was a tool of fear, of strategy, and of tragedy. The fire burned the trees, it burned the people, and it burned its way into history. The war moved on, the jungles slowly regrew, but the lessons of napalm, the balance between military necessity and human cost remain, and in every history book, every documentary, every photograph, the story of fire, survival, and loss lives on.